The first 3 weeks of the eruption here in Hawaii, crazy things would happen in the middle of the night. A new fissure would open up and it would threaten a new neighborhood. Thousands of people were evacuated from their homes. I started the Hawaii Tracker Facebook group to help people understand what's going on and get their questions answered.
Hey, how's it going? We're live. This is Fissure 20.
We had hundreds of people all throughout the neighborhoods sending in videos, articles, and images. We spend a lot of time making sure the accurate information gets out.
This is live. There's still lava moving.
They weren't just sharing a story, they were helping their neighbor. If a family was being evacuated, the group would just jump in and help out. It was huge. They were watching out for each other.
Hello everybody, thank you for coming. Thank you for the support from everybody.
As we go through this, we're growing closer together as a community. When tragedies like this strike, you really realize how much you need each other.
We are the Hawaiian Volcano Education and Resilience Institute, HVERI for short. A lot of people know us from the 2018 eruption of Kilauea in the Lower East Rift Zone. Working under Hawaii Tracker on the Facebook group. Since then, we've been trying to carry on and take the lessons, the hard lessons that were learned during that eruption and try and prepare for the next major disaster that comes to our island.
Yeah, so we do that through two different programs. One is volcano education, and the other part is digital resilience, which we address through online groups on social media. So the way the two programs work together is that the social media networks end up being a distribution pathway for all the information. And having that network in place means we can provide more than just volcano education, but any other preparedness information as well.
What we were working for really came about in the Mauna Loa eruption in 2022. Within hours of that eruption starting, we had the mayor, Mitch Roth, we had USGS HVO Ken Hahn on the stream trying to help flush out a little bit of the ongoing because it's so new. It's completely different from our previous major eruption, which was 2018.
One of the things that Talmadge and I were talking about was how do we deal with social media? And it was something we needed to figure out and get right. Our job is to get information to the public and make sure that the public get it as well as possible and as correctly as possible. When Philip and Dane started coming to you and live streaming the meetings, it was great because we were reaching more people than we normally would. So when the eruption actually happened, we had this relationship. The interviews we did during the eruption, the most fun ones were the ones with Philip and Dave because they were more relaxed, and we knew we were getting to the local community, and people were asking questions. So those were the best, I think. I just want to really give a shout out to those guys and how we worked as a team on this eruption. It really worked out well, and we got to a lot of people we wouldn't have normally gotten.
Hello everyone, welcome to our Hawaiian Volcano Tracker for March 5th, 2026. I'm geologist Philip Ong, here with Mr. Dane DuPont, our SEL interpreters, Carol and Danny, and we are part of HVERI, the Hawaiian Volcano Education and Resilience Institute. We're a nonprofit who is raising awareness here on Hawaii Island and educating on disasters and volcanic processes. And so all that said, Dane, long intro, how are you today? How's your week been?
Oh, doing good. Just been busy and being given a little bit of extra time with the current conditions up there, right? Not pressing upon us immediately. So it's been kind of nice to take care of some other things.
It's been a little slower for sure up there. Yeah, we'll talk about that today. And actually, because of that, we're going to bring you guys a special presentation today that's going to be about an hour long. A dramatic reading of survivor accounts of the 75 Halapē tsunami. So that'll be coming a little later on. That was a collaboration of the Pacific Tsunami Museum and Jackie Pulani Johnson, who we've had programs for before as part of the national park. So that'll be coming on the last hour of the program here. So but otherwise, we'll go through our paces as usual. We've got Lou in the back end, as well as Dane collecting questions and leading discussion in the chat. Anything else before we get into it, Dane?
No, let's do it.
All right. Let's get our screen set up here. And okay. Hello, everyone. This is our Hawaiian Volcano Summary for March 5th, 2026. It's been 18 days since episode 42 ended at Kilauea Summit, this ongoing eruption. And the volcano is still recovering. It's been about 75% of the ground tilt recovered over that interim period up to today. This live camera from the USGS showing the V3 view. You can see the two vents actively degassing here. And over the last week here, you can see the nighttime views of some glow, primarily from this south vent area, but occasionally from the north vent as well, and actually by last night becoming continuous at the south vent. That's most of the action you can see visibly. Here's the ground tilt plot showing that recovery 3/4 of the way up to the previous drop from episode 42, but interrupted by now the 5th small deflation inflation cycle that's superimposed on this recovery process here. That's the line in blue, the one pointing towards that magma body that's feeding the eruptions. USGS, in its daily update today, has thus extended their window to March 10th to 15th for the onset of episode 43 lava fountaining. And that is also subject to change if that deflationary pattern keeps occurring. So the key thing is that March 10th will be next Tuesday to the 15th, the end of next week. What would the weather be doing given the fallout of episode 41? And at present, the National Weather Service is saying that the winds will veer to the south and pull up a lot of deep tropical moisture starting around that same time frame for next week. So it's unclear what the effects of both wind and rain might be when that episode does come, but that's something that residents should be aware of the possibility and make preparations just in case. Otherwise, the lava flows are all contained within Kīlauea, the summit crater of the volcano. Here's a map with updated stats from March 2nd, now through 42 episodes, having up to 242 million cubic meters. And the way this looks from the air is seen here from this recent USGS overflight that I've sped up. You can see that crater is much of the way full from that 2018 collapse. Down on the ground, the views are dominated by the movement of the gas. And so here you see earlier in the week, these daytime views are showing some southerly winds with fog blowing towards the park overlooks, whereas in more recent days, it's gone back to the strong trade wind pattern. Even in these times between episodes, we still have fog coming out of the volcano and distributing around the island, especially to these South Hawaii and West Hawaii areas here. Current conditions, according to Purple Air, you can see are lots of those raised values over on the Kona side and down in Ocean View as well. Earthquake-wise, we continue to have deep Pahala earthquakes, as have become common now, and South Flank earthquakes shallower in the volcano, with these earthquakes colored by depth here. The orange being intermediate depths, with the blues being deeper. The red's shallowest of all. We still have some of these shallow summit earthquakes related to the refilling and recharge of the magma chamber, but also this population of deep earthquakes associated with that root feeder source, one of them into the volcano deep below the summit. So that's the past week, adding to the whole view of it cross section here. So this is the population below the summit of the volcano for the last week, and then the last month you can see all of them clustered together here in the middle with Pahala events off to the side there. So that's the update on Kilauea. Mauna Loa has had a new update issued as well, and the volcano really remains at alert level normal and aviation color green, with similar earthquake activity as the previous month, right, which includes under the summit and in the South Caldera region. And that's our Hawaiian volcano summary for this week. So let's move on to the hazard summary, which is to do with the gases. And I'll show you one additional time lapse here. This is the KW camera for the week, the daytime views. And so you see the gas does blow across the camera, a few of these early frames here. Although on the crater floor, you see some of these steam vents consistently blow from left to right. So trade winds are strong in some areas. The winds may be swirling in other areas around here. So there have been some impacts, but fairly limited from what I've heard and compared to some previous weeks where it's been much worse. That was a KW. Here is the B1, once again, slightly slower. So you can see that early push to the east and then this later push to the west here continuing. So turning to the VOG measurement prediction program, this is out of University of Hawaii at Manoa. And their VOG forecast dashboard, looking at first the SO2 pollutant, and that concentrates mostly to the southwest of Kilauea here in this next 48-hour window of forecast. And then if we go to the sulfate aerosols layer of pollutants, you can see that they actually linger a little further, and that's what ends up getting that foggy look in West Hawaii around the Kona coast. You can see it actually goes way offshore at times. So that's the VOG forecast dashboard. This is still at that 1,500 tons per day output level, which is high in relative terms for people, but for what the volcano does, it's on the low end, as when the episode does start, it's going to put out a whole bunch more of that gas, possibly hundreds of thousands of tons in that day. So with that, that's when it becomes important to know what the weather is doing, which way the wind is blowing, is the rain falling through it, and how, and with what force, and all of that during those potentially, we've seen from as little as 5 to as many as 14 hours or so that episode can last. So that's really what we're still most concerned with here as far as our community safety in a week ahead. Still, there is impact in between. So here's not just Hawaii Island, but to the other parts of the state as well from the state air quality data. You can see even over here in Hilo some other impacts. This is all PM 2.5 readings, so there could be other sources in the volcano as well. But you saw this distribution map from the VMAP project there that explains a lot of these readings, especially on the Kona coast here. And with purple air, we have extra readings for these areas right around the volcano, including north at Kulani, and the yellow currently as we speak, having really spiked since noon today. So just an example of that. Down the ocean view, it's even higher. This might be Kahuku. It's come in and out many times over the last couple of days, as you can tell here. So that's our purple air showing those impacts. They kind of are a little repetitive, but it's still worth documenting. They happen over and over and over, and still we don't talk about it as much as a community as we should. Maybe we talk about it too much here on this broadcast, but trying to pull our weight. So for a national park, here is their air quality website. The charts, if you see, will show at Uekahuna a bunch of time in the orange earlier today. At Kahuku, where we're just looking on there, something earlier in the day with a pure SO2 as well. That's mostly what you see on that reading. If we go to a current summary with a map, you'll see everything is actually in the green with a plume blowing southwest with a 9-mile-an-hour wind. So that's how we currently sit. Earlier in the week, we had some satellite captures. These are all in Greenwich time, but this is the 26th. You can see this fog cloud kind of pooling around the triangle of Kilauea here in the middle. And this will be from the 27th, where it's a little bit more directed to the north and east. And this would be from the 28th where you see it's split going 2 different ways here, northeast and off to the west over Mauna Loa. And finally, there's another capture from the 1st, is the most recent one we have, because we speak today on the 5th. So 4 days ago was still pooling around here. And what you saw is this is capturing those early days when the winds were more variable. And since then, they become trades. And even though we don't have an image, we'd expect them to be more off in that direction now. So all this is just tracking a pattern and just showing how impactful the weather is on the distribution of these volcanic hazards. So once again, this is the National Weather Service area forecast discussion. We talked about how it's going to be, it says east-southeast winds into Monday. Winds then veer to the south and draw north deep tropical moisture, setting the stage for wet weather next week. So that's exactly what is, there's a whole bunch of discussion in here. I won't go into, some of it gets kind of technical. I thought I could just cite it here. You guys can take a look if you want. We also rely on our local group, Puna Weather. And so in review for a little bit more basic vocabulary audience, Monday and Tuesday, moderate to breezy southeast winds with widely scattered showers, high pressure to our northeast, trade winds through Sunday, and early next week, the jet weak trough forming to our northwest. And it's going to bring in, pull in, let's see, where is it here? Pull tropical moisture over us from the southwest with winds near the surface out of the south. So that is a whole bunch of weather coming, and we'll just have to see how it reacts. And if you want to have another view of it, here's the Mauna Kea Weather Center GOES 18 channel 13 satellite, and this is the last 24 hours animated. You can see here that front that's got this flow similar to our winter pattern here, southwest to northeast. But as it approaches, it pulls all the stuff towards it. And that's what's happening at present here. So, right, that's enough meteorology for a geologist. Maybe one last image here of the SO2 layer from windy.com, showing there was the wind blowing that way here and kind of splitting off over here. So there is that front we just saw on satellite. There's our fog cloud now getting pulled off in that direction where before it was over here. And it's interesting, if you zoom way in, you can see these little eddies that are happening here and why that fog keeps swirling on the Kona coast, right? See that going this way, going that way, and coming back in. So some swirling winds around the island as this weather front approaches. Okay, so I'll go to some visual observations, and we'll just start with this USGS overflight, not quite as fast also. This is just them doing a visual assessment, scanning the area, likely making the map, and making all the measurements for the map that was released with the new statistics, which will show up here, but don't actually change much, the same rate. Everything is pretty much on track as before. That's part of this photo and video chronology released February 26th, showing them flying over and checking views down into the throats of the vents where they hadn't seen much of anything, no lava or incandescence. These wider views, some of it under extremely hazy conditions. They land and take samples of the lava. Here's all their sampling equipment. Hammer, bucket, sample bags, gas masks, suits. There they are taking samples of the episode 42. And finally here, they also service the V3 live streaming camera right there. So there it is. Let's go back so you can see it there in full. And with that, we'll jump over to the USGS Observatory messages, where you can see here on the 5th, they noted Matt and Mickey are at replacing the V1 camera with a new model. This camera has sound, so we're going to give that a try. Bear with us though, it is an experiment. It may take us a few days to get the bugs out if it works. Right, following on our messages we had from the maintenance last week.
Right. That's hope they have a good wind filter on that, and because that's been always the difficulty is we want to hear volcano sounds, but there's a lot of other sounds. At least now we don't have to compete with all the helicopter noise.
Let's hear it. Don't hear much right now.
No, it's mostly white noise and little bits of wind from what I could tell.
Yeah, but there it is.
But
There's our
I
volume
expect that
bar.
to change when
Yeah,
the thing's going. That's really the real test is during the episode. Right now, you kind of want it to be silent, actually, I think.
right. So when it's actually roaring, you can see the difference
Let
there.
the roar cut through type of thing without the wind noise. So
check it out. Sound button down here and a V1 camera. You guys can see and keep an eye on that in the future. That is the live view. Here's a V2 live, kind of hazy in that direction with that zoom. And the V3 continuing degassing, what we saw earlier today. So how does it look this past week? Here is that nighttime glow view. You can see some intermittent from the south vent starting off and not much from this view from the north vent. And then as the week goes on, you see it actually goes all the way dark, comes bright again. I think I got this going a little too slow here. Let's put this back to normal speed. All right, there we go. Normal speed. You see it's flashing a little more, north vent popping in, and then getting brighter here towards the end. And finally, when it stops here from the most recent view this morning, continuous glow coming from the south vent all night and bright intermittent flashes from the north vent too. So here is the same view from the V1 camera. South vent is in the upper part of the screen. The north vent would be down here. So you see that similar kind of flashing over the week here. The north vent becoming more visible in the recent days. Otherwise, what can we show you? The KW camera. This is one view per day since the end of episode 42, a couple of days after that. And overall, in the big picture, you don't see a whole lot of change. So it really takes zooming in to look at any changes. And we catch a little bit of this, almost like a lurching of this lava flow that's just cooling in the very first part of this sequence. Cone slumping a little bit, settling. See that flow moves out to here, moves out here. But the other thing you can see, if I pan over to the area where the lava often pools right here in the middle, is let me outline this area right in here, where you see the whole crater floor seems to be sinking. And so there has been downward movement right in there, with maybe a maximum being right here. And other areas, you see things happening. If you look close at this back, this is a little bit harder to see here. But the back part of this flow, you see this flow moving a little bit. And then right in here, there's uplift. If you see, there's like a white line that comes just below where I want to draw here, like a little bit of an arch like that. And there's one and one below, and they're coming together close right there. So it may be that when this flow was active and moving and pushing on the crust, some of that liquid part still in there, maybe redistributed and pushed up the crust over here. It's not quite clear, but it seems like there was some coexistence of that flow moving and this part here uplifting. Whereas over here, this is going on for a longer period of time. And after the flow is done, you see this kind of almost like a degassing of this pool over here, which we see again and again. And otherwise, panning over, you see some hint of movement around this bit of, we'll call it Kipuka, right? This little island of slightly older rock that didn't get covered by this most recent flow. Seems to be dropping down a little bit too over this inter-episode period too. So there's some minor changes happening, things are redistributing, all that in the context of, the tilt meter having these more frequent deflation events. And so we're just trying to figure out if there's anything visible changing that might lead us to some clues of what are some possible outcomes for the next episode. So looking at the B1 camera, similar view, it's not quite as clear. It gets a little bit more weather. It does seem like you can kind of see this drop a little bit, but it's right when the weather is bad, right after the episode ends, those initial few days. So maybe also an adjustment to some of the other lava flows surrounding there. Not quite clear. But that's about as exciting as we have this past week. We're still waiting an episode on coming in the next week. At least that's what I got from the time-lapse cameras. I'll bring in Lou here, and he can add some observations. How's it going, Lou?
Hey, doing good, doing good. Watching that big. I like the 1 day captures because it definitely shows the significance a lot more clear than just like we're so used to just the 3,000 images in a day type time lapses. So that was a good one you had there. Let's jump into observations, and then I'm gonna finish up what you started on the V1 cam. So let's drop this in there. So here is starting from last week on the 27th. This has been pretty typical over the last 4 or 5 episodes where we'll get some spatter, everybody gets excited, and then the tilt drops. And on the 27th, happened again. If you didn't hear, today is March 5th, so this was a few days ago. Another shot there from the V3 camera. That's the south vent spattering. Thank you, Dane, for the AI music hookup. Not too much. There's been a couple other moments, but without me running some filters, they were really hard to see. That one right there, I even added a little bit of a red to enhance it a little bit. You can see how it just went away. It was quick. Let's keep going here. There's a nice shot this morning. You can see both vents glowing, which is always a good sign that magma is a little closer to the surface. When we see both vents or just one vent glowing early AM, that's about 6:15. A lot of degassing still going on.
Beautiful.
That was a beautiful morning. We don't get a lot of these early morning, like perfectly clear, especially in the last several weeks. We've been dealing with a lot of weather. This was a good one to capture. V3 is a new camera, and now the V1 is a new camera. Supposedly we'll have some interesting night vision going on tonight. We will see. There's another shot from this morning at 6 o'clock from the V1. This was prior to them adding the new V1 camera in there. This was a little gas twister, for lack of a scientific term. We picked up off the V1 cam last week. Well, actually a couple days ago, 4 days ago. I sped that up a little bit. That was pretty cool to find. This is, let me pause this real quick. This is somebody had just pulled out their Christmas gift of their blue laser light. So that's what this was. I'm sure it was not an orb or a UFO. I don't have any of that confirmed. I'm speculating. But I'm pretty sure that was somebody shining a light down into the caldera. And this is them this morning changing out the V1 to their new V1 cam with audio. I'm gonna have an image of that coming up here in a minute. We listened to it for, I don't know, I had quite a few people listening to it for a little bit over an hour. Pretty typical, what you'd expect. Wind, crunching of rocks. They did all of this in silent. They were not talking because it was a hot mic. And I was expecting somebody to say something, but they did most of the setup in complete silence because I think they knew. I mean, we heard a little bit of test, but other than that, it was the crackling of the crunching of the tephra underneath their feet and the wind blowing. Obviously, the best sounds will be once the eruption episode begins and you get the just amazing sounds of the eruption, even when we're standing back a mile away. It's pretty impressive. I can only imagine being that much closer, how much better it's going to be. And let me put this up here. This is a shot of what they're installing. It's a version of like what we have here at our home. We have a couple of these types of cameras, obviously not that big. One question I have, I know we are going to have audio in for everybody to hear. But like our cameras at home, we can audio out. If a intruder or a visitor comes by, we can talk out that camera. I'm curious if we get any extra visitors around the cameras like we've seen in the past, if they'll be able to communicate. So
I was thinking load a Hawaiian chant on there.
Right?
Have it chant Pele
Heck
while
yeah.
she's going.
Yep. So there's our observations for the week.
All right. Thanks, Lou. We'll have you back here in a few minutes after we get through some more of our monitoring in your community corner.
Right on.
All right. So we'll step next to Volcano Watch presently with a couple of articles. There's an earlier article in a week. The USGS is going to launch updated aviation-focused volcano notices starting this month. And what this basically means is they're starting to adopt all the aviation acronyms and lingo. So this is what it would look like, for example. And the important thing is that this is, let's see here, machine readable, designed for seamless integration into aviation communication and flight planning systems. So they're basically trying to fit into their systems by giving information in this format. That's the long and short of it. Right there, that's the article was released earlier, and Volcano Watch released today, talking about that thing exactly some more, conforming to the new standards. They also talk a little bit about the alert level, which is different from the aviation color codes, and how those have largely been paired in the past, but sometimes they've been split, like during the eruption of Mauna Loa in 2022. And so all that is the surrounding information to these changes. If you're interested in that, you can go read them on our feeds here. I won't spend any more time getting into all that. But instead, just show you the other monitoring updates, which we have, which is the statistics with this new lava volume measured through episode 42, measures of the average elevation, average thickness, maximum thickness. Over here, we have current vent elevations, the vent level below the rim, 230 feet for where we wanted to know, the vent height above the surrounding lava. So how tall do they look on a camera, for example? About 115 feet, 35 meters there. And that cone on the northwest side there, peak elevation and height to the crater rim, how tall it's gotten, the tephra pile on the rim up here on the side. So those are the numbers. We'll show you guys the graphs for this week here, showing the last week of the summit in blue and the rift zone in green. The rift zone showing a little bit of a wiggle, but largely flat there. The rift zone, the summit showing this deflation, inflation pattern ending about a week ago, and then 4 days of straight inflation before we have this most recent one. They last about a day each time. So there was a day previous to this cutoff here that was also in deflation. Right? But we resumed it again, and off we go. And earthquakes have been coming and going. What's interesting, if I put these at the same week period, so you can see how during this deflationary trend, we actually have a little bit of a reduction in these shallow depth earthquakes, where they are a little bit more abundant in this earlier part of the week as the volcano ends this deflation and starts inflating again. But then they pick back up again on the right side, right there. All that while the Pahala earthquakes stay somewhat more constant at a lower rate. And so altogether, you do see this hump that corresponds to the inflation, deflation just for this past week. And that's interesting because we haven't always seen that. It's not always evident. We'll come back to this here in a minute. But in map view, those earthquakes in the shallow region are both under the summit, and there's some intermediate here and on the south flank as well. These are kind of north of the rift zone. So no rift zone earthquakes, but some north and the normal population you see to the south as far as these oranges and reds. The blues are on the left side here, deep in Pahala off to the southwest, and in the middle, in this middle stripe, you can see they're mostly under the summit. A couple of them are further off under this Kauai fault zone region as well. That whole triangle zone right in there. That's over top of that feeder system deep under Kilauea, shown in cross section right here. For the last week, and there's the shallow ones, shallow summit ones. Here is the south flank events. And for the last month, you see those populations filled out even more. So there's that shallow orange and red, and some of the yellows under the summit there, with the deep blue ones, with this cloud over here. And then this whole south flank event over here with a little bit more sporadic, but still some adjustments happening here north of the East Rift as well. Right, the south flank events are more concentrated just south of the summit, but continue at a lower gear further to the east as well. The whole south flank normally active as well. So nothing to be alarmed about there. And here it is in cross section, that same view. The yellow one's actually showing that lower magma depth, perhaps some feeder into that, and then the shallow ones over the summit, south flank all over here, and here's that deep under the summit feeder zone and Pahala, which maybe they're connected in some way, hard to tell. We talked all about that last week. If you want to get more information on that, watch our full update from last week. So for the last month period of time, you see 42 drop, and then all the deflation cycles, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 right there. And you can note that this period of deflation right here is the one that has this gap right there in the earthquakes, but that we have not had that necessarily during these past periods. So that seems to be a recent thing. Or maybe that one right there, maybe a little bit of a gap right there. This one here correspond to there, and that one to there. So not quite as obvious. So maybe it's a little bit more primed, or something's changed a little bit to start showing a pattern. It's been variable. It's certainly reacting in some way, just not consistently, as you can see here. So earthquake counts, there they are combining. In this case, you can see much more of the deep Pahala counts adding to this graph, keeping a little bit more consistent across. And over 3 months, you can see now that this recovery from episode 42 was unusual, and how quickly we had this first deflation event and a second one and a third, and how they seem to be ongoing the entire time. Whereas in the past, we've seen these more frequently towards the end of the inflation recharge cycle. Right? So that's a new thing, and we're still wondering, what does that mean for the volcano and what changes might come? Can't always do the same thing forever, so we know things will change. We're just trying to perhaps anticipate how, and discuss how the volcano works so we can prepare for its hazards. So there it is, then the whole over 1 year period, and for the 1 year time frame, earthquakes. And so you see that we did have a little bit higher earthquakes last week, and earthquakes per week count, but and maybe that relates to that deflationary trend we've been having. But you can see it's not nearly as high as the ones we had a little more than a month ago, where the USGS was considering alternate magma pathways and putting that in their updates. So we haven't seen anywhere near that threshold. It's more in line with what you see, these regular spikes in the background over the past year. So not to be alarming, just noticing the interesting pattern is developing there. So that's it for the monitoring, and we'll just jump to look at the earthquakes quickly here. Oh, I guess I never put it on there's monitoring, and now let's go to earthquakes. And looking at the earthquake map, zoomed in on Kilauea there. There's shallow event, deep one. These deep events is most recent ones. That's 36 kilometers down. That one's 28 kilometers down, very deep events. This one over here, 30 and a half down. So that deep Pahala range, a few shallow events, a few south flank events, including this magnitude 2.4 right there, a little bit further over 2.1. And on Mauna Loa's flank, there's a 2.1 and a 2.1 again. More deep events under Mauna Loa and other settling events, as well as Pahala. Right? There are some shallow over top of the Pahala zone earthquakes as well, but not too many. Still, it's very quaky in Pahala these days, isn't it? So looking at the earthquakes by size, the largest one is a 3.9 this past week. On March 1st, it was 10:40 p.m. local time, 21 miles down. And big gap to the next one being a 2.7, which is one of these shallow ones southwest of Mauna Loa's caldera, Mokua Veoveo. And then we have these couple events over here near Kulani Road, north of Mountain View, 2.6, and I think it's a 2.1 is also over there. 2.0 over there as well. And otherwise, you can see now we're back to deep under Waimea, south flank, that 2.4 we pointed out. And the next one is the next deep Pahala event, also near that 3.9 over there. 3.9, and there's the next event. So not so many aftershocks, but just the normal events, a couple of 2.4s happening right over there in the 1 day and 2 days later kind of range. So that's it for the earthquakes as well. And one last thing to cover before we do our community corner is Mauna Loa, which has its monthly update out as part of the USGS catalog for the month. So we have Mauna Loa with similar activity seismically to the previous month, 116 compared to 123, and still variable rates of inflation at the summit, all associated with refilling in the summit reservoir system following 2022. So basically everything's normal. There's nothing really unusual in this update, as is also the case for Halapē volcano and Haleakala and Mauna Kea, and the volcano formerly known as Loihi, if you would like to say it, Kamaehua Kanaloa. So that is it. And for Mauna Loa, the earthquakes for the last month looked like this. So there is those summit earthquakes. There's that southwest of the caldera population. And we also have this other northwest quadrant that usually shows up in yellow depths on this map. So looking at depth versus time for the last month here, you see that we actually had more of the shallow events at Mauna Loa summit earlier in the month, and they seem to have slowed down a little bit. And now we have more of these deeper earthquakes over the past week and a half or so. Oh, normal variability, but that's just how we're seeing it today. For the last year, here are the earthquake counts. So it was a little bit higher recently and has dropped down. So presently, you can see the most recent week was back in the lower end, and we look to be on track to match that again. For the last year, overall, you can see here that there have been earthquakes in that shallow depth of Mauna Loa for a while, but for the first half of the last, or let's call it the first 6 months of this last year, most of these are small dots. There are some bigger clusters of larger events, but notably over this last third of the year, the events haven't really gone up in number, but they've gone up in size all through here as well, and also noticeably in this yellow band all through here, as well as you can see some of these deeper feeder source earthquakes as well. So that's how it looks time depth, while we see the summit still rising in the GPS elevation and expanding north and south, kind of flip-flopping as that center of swelling moves from in caldera in between these two stations to outside of it where it pushes them together. So that's kind of variability that they've been noticing, and all that in a context of what we learned from the USGS in their Volcano Watch last week about how this recent long-term tilt change is corresponding to the deformation change on the summit as well, showing magma near the surface and responding to these changes at a very shallow level. They also said not to worry about it erupting quite yet because it has to have the earthquake levels to do so. And here are earthquakes per month for Mauna Loa for the last 5 years. And so here we are building up. You can see there's a clear rise right there. But this is the year and a half before the Mauna Loa eruption. And you can see we're nowhere near those levels of events. And so it's basically a result of the 2022 eruption is this more active shallow magma system that now is more sensitive to these signals that we can track as it's refilling for the next however long it takes. Right, so that's where we are, all normal in Mauna Loa. And with that, I'll pass it to you, Lou, again for our community corner. Can't hear you.
Hey, you didn't give any timeline for Mauna Loa. Everybody keeps asking. You just breezed right through that. Uh-huh.
I don't know.
Nobody knows, right?
Nobody knows, and so why yeah.
Right on. Let's go into community corner. You're gonna get out of here. Bring Dane in here. There he is. Dane needs to be here for this. All right, let's get this up here. We got who else we got? We got Dano. Oh, good. Oh, good. Here we go. Good to have our ASL interpreters and all of those in our deaf community We're happy to have you here as well as everybody else out there. Let's go through what's happening around. As you already know, the big news of the day is the V1 camera with the audio. Should be interesting. Episode 43, as well as the new V3 camera. Not much going on up and around the park.
Both of those got rid of the stutter, though, right? The little
the stutter was
really
gone.
the thing's still there. Oh,
the stutter was gone before the cameras got replaced. They were gone. I mean, that came and went, but we'll see.
Yeah, right.
Yeah. It's a pretty magnificent feat to have a live stream on a volcano. I mean, we have problems with our gear, and we're not doing anything like that. Congratulations to those guys for pulling it off, regardless of any issues that happen, right? I'm curious about how the feedback's going to be with the audio. I don't sleep with a fan or white noise playing. Some people love it. I'm not a white noise kind of guy. I think we need to touch a little bit on boundaries in the park and touching things in the park. We had an incident again at the park. I'm sure you all have already caught up on. I'm not going to rehash that. Those of you have already talked about it in the chat. The other is the tephra that is everywhere. We talk about the tephra that's on the ground. It is combined with Pele's hair. It's everywhere still. Messing with it, smashing it in your fingers is only going to lead to irritation in your skin and your eyes and your respiratory system. So better off not to mess with it. And yellow jackets are always be on alert up there. There is a shot from the new V3 cam. It wasn't actually installed today. It was installed last week, but you get the idea. It is actually pretty clear. I will say that. Take out the fact that we had the buffering issue that was going on, or the stuttering more so maybe than buffering, but it definitely seems clearer, and they moved it over a little bit. That is a shot from Kilauea Iki Overlook, looking at the vents there. You can go there and check it out for a good view, and that's what you will see from your car. It's a good shot. There are the viewing locations, and I cannot emphasize this more, especially in light of what happened up at the park recently. They're not suggested boundaries. They are actual legit don't go zones. Watch your step and try to stay safe. The park says safety is your responsibility. However, when something happens, family members, first responders are the ones taking care of you. So no, it's just not you getting involved. The Welcome Center is open, not the Visitor Center yet. They're still under construction there. Go into the Welcome Center for all your information on what's happening in the park. Check that out there. Let's see if I can change screens. Maybe. There we go. Make it your first stop. You can get some water because there are a lack of water bottle filling stations. You can talk to the rangers. There are programs going on all throughout the week. Best to talk to them and find out, because weather changes everything at the park. Parking. Every week I have to say this, but here we go. We're probably week out. It's already busy in the park. Parking is already tough. For those of you in the chat, I have talked to a few of you. I don't know if you'd heard this, Dane, but Kilauea Overlook viewing parking area, they closed it down for handicap only. I'm not sure if that is full time or if that was just during the episode. So if you are in the chat and you know, or drop it in the comments, let us know. I'm gonna have to do a little bit more information, because that's an interesting one. There's limited parking to begin with, so closing off one entire parking area for handicap only is good. It's actually really good, because there isn't as much up on Waikahuna.
All right.
Safety tips: bring your water, your UV spray, and some type of hat. Oh man, I lost Dano. Just like that. All right. Hi, Carrie. Bring your sunscreen, drink plenty of water. Exposure is a real thing. You are in Hawaii. You should know if you're everybody knows at the beach that you are going to be exposed to the sun and the wind, but it is exactly the same, if not more, up on the summit. It's 4,000 feet up there. It'll get you. Safety is your responsibility. Stay hydrated. There is one of our AI girls that are doing our commercial here for bringing your water bottle. Staying hydrated in Hawaii Volcanoes National Park. Like I said earlier, there is a lack of water bottle filling stations. You can purchase at Volcano House. You can buy up at KMC, or you can just bring your own.
It's that time, Lou.
I'm just here for the dogs and the drinking water from Bottles Club. Well, we have a, let's see here. What's next? Let's see if I can change screens here. Here we go. You're getting the llamas, the alpacas again tonight. I'm still working on a new dog one, but tonight you get the alpacas again. The Catahoula alpaca. Yes. Thank you to VO.
Also request for cats and or horses.
Yes, we have thrown cats in there. I've actually, we've had a beaver at one time. I don't know if you guys have caught that in one of them. Then we'll throw in a mystery guest this for next week. Stay tuned.
Okay. All right.
For some of you that don't know about hiking, especially here, rapid ohia death is a real thing, and it's spread on your vehicle tires, on your boots. So we have boot brush stations located in different areas of the park. Spray them down, scrub them down before you go in and out. Just help protect our native forest here. There should be some spray. There usually is there. If not, it doesn't hurt to have some. If you're a hiker, it doesn't hurt to have it with you. Every step counts, Dane. Every step counts. This is an event coming up for us, the Ohana Fun Day up in Kohala. It's a community celebration featuring a civil defense emergency preparedness mini fair on March 14th. I'm putting this out earlier than I normally would. Normally, I'm like a week ahead of time. That's about it. But this is up at the northern part of the island. And hopefully if you're down here and you want to do something fun for the day and come mess with myself and Dane, we'll be up there.
And this is the latest iteration of the civil defense mini prep fairs that we've been helping civil defense plan. So second one of the year up in Avi should be a fun one. And Alana Day, it's always a exciting place for the kids with the bounce houses and all the other exhibits that are there. I remember last year Food Bank was there too with a whole bunch of provisions, and we left with like a box of MREs.
That's right. We did, huh? That's right. Yeah. That's pretty much what we were eating on the way home because we couldn't get into anywhere to eat. It was so busy in Waimea.
Yeah, that's right. Oh,
so come check us out at the Ohana Fun Day on March 14th from 10 to 1 up there. This is what's going on at the Volcano Art Center. It's Aloha Fridays. It's pretty much every Friday. You can see I have them there. Tomorrow is the first Friday of the month, and it's lei making with Kaipo Chong. It's every Friday, 11 to 1 at the Volcano Art Center. This is a program kind of that supports us as well. It's supported by the part of Hawaii State GIA Vai program, which Dane is going to talk to you about in just 1 minute. And if you'd like to join our email list, it's hveri.org/subscribe. Get in there now so that you get a notification when episode 43 kicks off. Dane and I have a pretty good track record. I don't want to jinx us, but we're doing pretty good on this one.
They've been weird the last few ones where it's like, we know it's going to do the thing, but do we say it now or do we wait 40 minutes until it's a little closer to doing the thing, right? And like the actual thing? And the last few episodes have been kind of weird, but
if everybody out there, if everyone could see our conversation that 20 minutes or 1 hour prior, it's hilarious. All right, Dane, talk to us about the Vai program.
Right. Well, yeah, we'd like to thank Vai Grant Program for helping providing funding for our volcano education, but also our digital resilience and youth development programs, as well as the Kilauea recovery grant. They supplied a good amount of support for this for our organization and enough to really keep us going. And would like to thank them, but we also like to thank everybody that tuned in today. The likes, subscriptions, the shares, all that stuff. It really does help. It helps get this out there. We did have some donations come through as super chat. We had a $20 donation from two continued longtime supporters, Norm, $20, and Mark with a $50 donation. Appreciate all the support there, guys. And yeah, if you do want to make a donation, we do take super chats on YouTube. We have a fundraiser running there, but we also have hveri.org/donate, which you see on screen there. Those are the two best ways to support us if you are so inclined to do so. But really, we just enjoy everybody being here. All right. So let's go ahead and get into our back half. Thank you, Lou, and I'll get Phil back in here. All right. You're back, Phil. Let's see which screen.
I gotta click the right button. It was really tiny on the screen here, so I unmute myself. So, all right. Time for our presentation, and this is going to be something we recorded at Volcano Awareness Month. It's been a little while now. It was back in the end of January, remembering Halapē, and at the Kahuku unit. It's about an hour long. You can check it out. I myself, when I was listening, I found it more and more interesting the more I listened to it. So maybe you'll feel the same and feel it's worth being here for the next hour or so. Without further ado, here is the Remembering Halapē from Kahuku from Volcano Awareness Month back in January 2026.
Today commemorates the tragic event, that incredible, devastating event down at Halapē 50 years ago.
So the Pacific Tsunami Museum was wise in its mission to share the science, but also educate, but to capture the stories of those who were affected by the various tragedies that our island has been through. We are extraordinarily fortunate today to welcome two of the survivors of Halapē who are with us today, and then some family members, others whose lives are changed because of Halapē. So after our performance, we'll have an opportunity for questions, but also to visit with those people who were indeed the ones who survived this day, that many years ago. I would like to recognize Beverly, please. Yeah. All the way from Oahu, so that she could be sure she was part of this. Fal Allen. Hey, come over here, local boy here. He was raised here, went off to seek his fortunes, and has moved back home, wise man that he is. Indeed. So I would also like to recognize, we have Bob Ackerman, his wonderful wife, Kela, too. Bob is the son of a woman who survived Halapē as well. She's mentioned in this script. Alahamai Eva. From Konosa. And Patty, I would like to give this to you too, because the whole earth shook secondarily after those earthquakes when your father passed there. I remember him. So without further ado, living history means you are hearing the words of the people whose stories were captured. My job was just to assemble it, put it together, kind of thematically, etc. It'll be interesting when the mic goes back and forth, but think of it as our own little ballet, the Halapē ballet. I treasure these actors who have the passion and the heart for these stories. So without further ado, e olo ulu.
Halapē 75, a crevice in time. Idyllic Halapē.
Halapē. We saw a gorgeous blue water lagoon next to a beautiful grove of coconut palms that were along the little bay area.
Halape. I remember that was a pretty cool hike. Just because I remember we all went at night, like 9 or 10 o'clock at night.
We did the Halapē trip every year during Thanksgiving. It was an annual event.
Halapē was like an oasis in itself. This coconut grove out in the middle of no place. You know.
For someone who hasn't been down to Halapē, in that particular part of the island, it's hot! You've got a lot of sun reflecting from the lava.
All it had was just this coconut grove with this huge 1,000-foot pali in the background, ocean to one side, the pali to the other side, and it had this small island off of it.
The moon was like full down there, and we hiked down over the hills and just sat there and watched the moonlight over the ocean, and we're like probably 2,000 feet up or something. It's just so cool.
You got a number of places that are steep going down. We went down the Helena Pali Trail.
It was the fall of 1975. My friends, Barbara Ackerman, Keith Stratton, Brad Jones, and I decided it would be fun to spend Thanksgiving weekend camping. And Barbara suggested that we hike down to Halapē. She was always so adventurous. Our plan was to hike in on Friday, November 28th, and hike out on Sunday, November 30th.
I only went on 2 or 3 hikes, so the one 35 miles along the coast, it was kind of a big one. You have to go on some hikes to prove that you could do it because there was no support.
There were a total of 32 that were going to be down there. So the Boy Scouts had one group, the Sierra Club apparently had a big group, and then there was a group of fishermen that had gone in by horseback, I remember.
It was probably the middle of the afternoon, and I was totally wiped out by that. The lagoon was there, so I just kind of floated around the lagoon to recover. Then we have to set up camp in the coconut grove.
All around it was all lava, just different types of lava. So it was quite barren. It was literally like an oasis, like you would see in the desert, except this was by the ocean in Hawaii, with lava all around it, not sand. And it had a little sand beach. We set bonfires at night. So that's what Halapē was.
They had a friend who was a pilot, and he would fly over and the guy would come in low. And he'd push things out of the cargo or the seat, and there'd be some sodas for the kids and some beers for the adults. and maybe some steaks, so we could have a Thanksgiving dinner. We'd have to swim out and bring them in, but in the morning, it just seemed like a normal day.
Yeah, that was our annual trip. Our troop was Troop 77, and we was based out of the Hilo Methodist Church. Other people were coming, so it was like getting kind of crowded at Halapē. So I took the boys and took them down to Boulder Bay, which was the first time we ever did that. We usually always stayed right there in the coconut grove. And so that's where I ended up with the boys for 2 nights before the tsunami came. We ended up in the shelter. I believe, I guess because we were the first there. So we kapooed the shelter there.
Yeah, I remember there was a little lean-to, I think, and some water. It was like a rain catch water thing. And the second time I went there, they built a second shelter down the beach, about a third of a mile. It was a little ways down. The Scoutmasters and then their friends. Let's see, it was Claude Moore and Jimmy Kawakami and James Mitchell, the one that died. They all stayed at the Coconut Grove, and we stayed, most of the Boy Scouts, down the way.
Yeah. Halapē was one of the more epic hikes.
It was a difficult hike because it's, 9 or 11 miles, and it's rough, kind of rough terrain. And you're pretty tired by the time you get there.
It was just a pretty normal night going to sleep. It was a moonless night, so it was a dark night.
After we rested, we unpacked our gear and then gathered our okihi for okihi stew dinner that night. As darkness set in, we settled into our sleeping bags to gaze at the stars as we fell asleep.
And I remember from the first time that I went Halapē, back from the beach a ways, there's like the fault line. There's a big crack there, and that crevice is full with brackish, mostly fresh water, which is kind of cool. Like, you're going to go all this way, and then there's fresh water you can jump in. And I think the earthquake happened on the second night we were there, right?
Earthquake.
Went fishing that day, spear fishing. Brought the 3-pronged spear, so some of the guys went fishing and cleaned some fish. It was just a typical day. We went to bed early because it was dark and we were all tired. And then there was an earthquake, which was pretty big. We'd all been through earthquakes living in Hilo.
We got awoken by the first earthquake because there was 2.
I know. In the middle of the night, we woke up. We were awakened by the ground shaking and a lot of noise. Keith yelled out that it was an earthquake and the noise was rocks falling down from the nearby gully. We decided to move closer to the water to get further away from that area. I've been other earthquakes in Hilo, but not one of that magnitude, which was a 5.8 earthquake.
And the other thing is, with the poly right there, with even the first word, earthquake, you could hear the rocks falling out. It was like several hundred yards back. So I thought, no, that's too far back.
We heard the noise, and they said something about rocks coming down. The earth was shaking so hard that we just had to bounce to the ground because it was swaying back. No, it was just tossing us back and forth. So we're just like, I think, stunned, all of us.
They say the first one was over 5.0 on the Richter scale, so that's a pretty good jolt. And where we were, it was kind of close to the epicenter. We felt it pretty good, so we kind of got up and then afterwards it was like, okay, go back to sleep. Because we grew up in the land of earthquakes, so it wasn't that big of a deal.
Then, late at night, I don't remember the exact times, it was a real bad earthquake.
Now, the second earthquake came, which was over 7.0. Now, that's a lot bigger. And that's the biggest any of us ever went through. And it was like you couldn't even stand.
Actually, what was scary about that one, besides the severity of the earthquake, was the cliff in the back of the campground. It started an avalanche during the earthquake. Big boulders, bouncing down, coming across the lower part there. It looked like they were going to come into the campground, but they never got close.
We didn't worry about it too much. Yeah. And everybody would, just went back to sleep, and then a couple hours later, a much bigger earthquake. Yeah.
Then, later on, I guess it was early in the morning, the second earthquake hit. And that one was worse than the first one. You couldn't even stand up with that one. You had to sit down. You couldn't possibly stand unless you were holding on to a tree.
I came out of the shelter and looked at the Boulder Bay. And they didn't call it Boulder Bay for nothing, because all I could imagine was this boulder coming down. Boom! And then, I mean, you could hear the boulders coming down. Boom! There was definitely boulders coming down. And we're talking about boulders. We're not talking about rocks. We're talking about boulders.
And right after the earth stopped shaking, I happened to be looking towards Punaluu from that area, and you could see a lot of blue flashes in the sky.
That was huge. I mean, I remember being shook and just, you couldn't stand up. It was too much. And then there were a lot more rocks that were coming down. So we were kind of worried about that. I don't know whether I actually saw it or not, but it was like a flash of lights over the poly, like a piece of electric effect or something. Now when I think back, I'm not sure if I really saw that or if it just like, all the lights are like in my head from the fear. But there was.
I saw it.
You saw it? You remember that?
Yeah. In fact, there are several people who saw it. And later I did reading about it, some sort of electrical discharge associated with these sorts of earthquakes.
And I just assumed that it was power lines snapping. But from what I understand later on reading reports in the newspaper, when you get these severe earthquakes, you get these blue flashes that occur which has nothing to do with power lines.
But it was, from our perspective anyway, in my memory, yeah, a flash. So it was lighting up like backlit, and at the same time you could see these giant boulders, the size of cars rolling down the hill. And the ground was literally doing this. You couldn't stand up. I remember crawling on all fours and seeing some of the rocks, near us, hopping as the ground just...
Yeah.
And so this trip was like, I don't know, for whatever reason, nobody had a flashlight. The only flashlight we had was somebody had a pen light. Now this is a dark night, a moonless night, and all we had for 5 people, the little pen light to see to untie our packs from our frame. Huh. So we're trying to do that, and all of a sudden, I believe it was Fall Island when, look. And I looked back, and we had water come right up to the shelter. All you could see was white water come right up to the shelter. So that really got our attention.
What we didn't know at the time was that the ground was doing this, and it was sinking.
It was going down. Yeah, it was like we were camped about maybe 6 to 10 feet above sea level, and the ground that we were on subsided like down 10 or 15 feet. So we went from being above sea level, and after the earthquake, we were below sea level.
Keith had a flashlight, and he was shining his flashlight up towards the water, and all of a sudden he went, "Water's gone! The water's gone!" And we were like, "What?" And then he yelled, "Wait, the water's coming back in! Pick up your sleeping bag!"
And then, kind of right after that, a large swell of water came in. And just one fellow was with me. We were all kind of camping in the same area. The father and son took off running to get away from the wave, and then the other guy did the same thing.
And then all of a sudden, I had water ankle high on myself. And the next thing I know, I'm trying to pick up my sleeping bag, faster, and I got hit with something that was waist high. So I got hit by a wave, hit me waist high, and it just knocked me down and swept me off.
The other fellow and myself, since I can't run, I wanted to grab a hold of a coconut tree, and I did. And this other guy, instead of getting his own coconut tree, he wrapped his arms around me and the coconut tree. So he couldn't shimmy up.
And right behind us, there was a lot of scrub brush in the area, and I remember I'm underwater and I'm tangled up in something. I don't know what it is, and I just remember trying to kick and swim underwater, and I'm not a good swimmer. And how long can I hold my breath? So I just kept holding my breath and thinking, oh, this is not going to be good.
And so Thal ended up climbing the rock wall. I ended up following him, and by the time I got to the top of the rock wall, the big wave came and hit us. The shelter, the water, the roof with all the rafters and stuff came down on my head. That's probably, now that I'm thinking about it, I never really thought about it. I always thought maybe I hit something along the way, like maybe the water tank, but maybe that was it. Maybe it was just the roof coming down on my head. I remember something hitting my head because you're in the water now and just boom, boom, boom. Everything happens so fast.
And the thought passed through my mind that I'm going to die here. My mom's going to be pissed off that I died in Hawaii. And all of a sudden, I broke up and got a breath of air. The water was gone. But then immediately I was underwater again. And turning and turning and tossing. Then I'm trying to kick, but this time my hands are behind my back, tied up, and I'm thinking, this is it.
Yeah. I remember somebody saying, crawl towards the ocean. So everybody's like, crawl and go towards the ocean. So we're crawling this way, and then I think it was Twig Smith who said, oh shit. Everybody looked up and the water, was just coming.
Coming right in.
A white wall. At that point, the earth had quit moving enough that you could stand up. So I think we all stood up and we literally ran.
A white wall. Yeah, a bunch of people, I don't remember who, but a bunch of people actually jumped onto the roof after that.
Oh, that was me.
You got up there?
That was me.
Yeah. I was down on the ground getting washed around.
But the shelter was a three-sided kind of thing, pointing the open wall out to the ocean with lava rock, up about 4 feet maybe.
Yeah.
And there's a shed roof on there, and when the water started coming in, I realized I couldn't run it. So I jumped up on the rock wall part, and I got up through there. Onto the roof before the first wave hit. I was hanging on, just my arms over the roof when the first wave hit.
I had intentions to try and shimmy up the coconut tree and get above the height of the wave. Of course, that never really happened. And when the wave came in, it wasn't a wave you would normally see when you're looking out the ocean. This was just like a high swell that came in. It came in and I got up as high as I could, and we were just washed away from the tree. Couldn't hold on to it. And after that, it was just being tumbled around all over the place. I seem to remember coming up at least once, maybe twice, for a breath of air. But I had no idea, where I was and how far we were getting washed in. And then I finally surfaced, and I recognized that I was in the crack, the crevice.
And then suddenly I'm up in the air and I'm breathing and then I'm underwater again. Then I just felt myself being tumbled among all the rocks around me. And the next thing I know, I'm sitting on the ground and the water is gone. The 3 waves had swept me further inland and then receded. I was stunned, beat up, but fortunately relatively uninjured.
I did see a couple of kids scurry by the bank. Then the crack was like a sharp drop off on the campground side. But on the other side, it was kind of a steep gravity slope. I guess it's possible, to climb up that way. And I'm trying to make a guess that the depth had to be, that you have to climb out of the crack. It might have to be maybe 8-10 feet, something like that. When I tried, I kept sliding down and couldn't make any headway there. I got scratched up pretty good getting through that until I found a place that I could actually crawl up that side of the crack.
Barbara, Keith, Brad, and I were all swept inland, but we were spread far apart. We started calling for each other and managed to find each other in the dark and just hunker down until daybreak. A couple of fishermen were nearby and joined our group. I'd been wearing a long-sleeve Western shirt with snaps, and my arms had felt tied behind my back because the force of the water had popped the front snaps, and the snaps on my wrist had pulled my arms behind me, which were finally released. We were all cold, wet, and shivering. One of the fishermen was in our little group, and he took off his t-shirt and gave it to me. I am so grateful for his kindness. We all waited for daylight to arrive and figure out what to do next. We were just trying to stay together until daylight came. And the Boy Scouts, I have to commend them so much. They're really grouping everybody together and doing a remarkable job. As daybreak came, we could see some of the devastation that had occurred. The coconut tree grove was now covered in several feet of water, and ground vegetation had been swept away. One of the horses, tied to a coconut tree, was floating now in the now calm ocean waters. Behind us and parallel to the coastline was a long stretch of rocks piled high that had been washed up from the sea by the tsunami and deposited parallel to the coastline. Among the rocks were fish, debris, and remnants of our camping gear, etc. My Nikon camera with the last photos of Halapē was nowhere to be seen. Soon after daybreak, a small single-engine plane was seen approaching. Pilots Bobley and Cliff Collins were our friends, who knew that we were camping at Halapē and jumped into action. They circled Halapē and dipped the plane wing to acknowledge having seen everyone waiting for help. They were able to make radio contact with the military helicopter pilots, who were apparently headed toward Punaluu. We were subsequently rescued by the military helicopters, most injured first, and taken to Kīlauea Hospital to assess our injuries. Fortunately, all 4 of us only had minor scrapes and some cuts. We were released to return home to rest and recover.
For me, what happened was somehow I got washed into a bush. There was a lot of little shrubs, and I don't know how I managed to do this, but I got headfirst into a bush, and I was trapped underwater. So I missed at least one of the waves. It seemed like forever. I thought that was the end for me, because I was underwater and I didn't know where that would end. So I was just kind of like the light flashing by in front of me, and then the wave pulled back in the opposite direction. So when that happened, it popped me out of the bush, and I remember floating around in water for just a moment. And then a bunch more waves happened, and then the waves kind of retreated. So I must have moved inland a ways. And then, when the last wave retreated, I just tumbled over the rocks and plumped there. I think I was yelling, "Help! Help!" when it all stopped, and then I was thinking, this is stupid. Everybody needs help. Yeah, I think what I did at that point was I wandered back towards the coconut area but the main area on the back side of the fall had just found a high rock there and sat till morning. And I remember sitting there with a couple of different people, but I don't remember who I was with. I just can't remember that. Remember when it started to get light, it was very cold, and I mean, we were all soaking wet, and it's probably low 60s or something, but we're just cold. So I thought, well, I need to move around. And that's when I found Moore. What's his name?
Claude.
Claude. I found Claude Moore, and I think he had collapsed lung or something. He probably, I think he broke a couple of ribs, and he was just sitting on a rock. He looked like he was stable. He was sitting there like he didn't want to move.
Ocean with lava rock, up about 4 feet maybe.
Yeah.
And there's a shed roof on there, and when the water started coming in, I realized I couldn't run it. So I jumped up on the rock wall part, and I got up through there, onto the roof before the first wave hit. I was hanging on just my arms over the roof when the first wave hit.
I had intentions to try and shimmy up the coconut tree to get above the height of the wave. Of course, that never really happened. And when the wave came in, and it wasn't a wave you would normally see when you're looking out the ocean. This was just like a high swell that came in. It came in, and I got up as high as I could, and we were just washed away from the tree. Couldn't hold on to it. And after that, it was just being tumbled around all over the place. I seem to remember coming up at least once, maybe twice, for a breath of air. But
So hold on, so repeating a little bit here. Let me fast forward a little bit just to see if I can find the right spot.
Highlands Bobley and Cliff Collins were our friends.
Just laying on the rocks, and the people with the horses around and around. Not too long after that, helicopters started coming in, and once I called the helicopter,
Before that, maybe?
Our injuries. Fortunately, all 4 of us only had
into a bush. There was a lot of little shrubs, and I don't know how I managed to do this, but I got headfirst into a bush, and I was trapped underwater. So I missed at least one of the waves. Seemed like forever. I thought that was the end for me, because I was underwater and I didn't know where that would end. So I was just kind of like the light flashing by in front of me, and then the wave pulled back in the opposite direction. So when that happened, it popped me out of the bush, and I remember floating around in water for just a moment. And then a bunch more waves happened, and then the waves kind of retreated. So I must have moved inland a ways. And then when the last wave retreated, I just tumbled over the rocks and plumped there. I think I was yelling, "Help! Help!" when it all stopped, and then I was thinking, this is stupid. Everybody needs help. Yeah, I mean, I think what I did at that point was I wandered back towards the coconut area but the main area on the back side of the fall had just found a high rock there and sat till morning. And I remember sitting there with a couple of different people, but I don't remember who I was with. I just can't remember that. Remember when it started to get light, it was very cold, and I mean, we were all soaking wet, and it's probably low 60s or something, but we're just cold. So I thought, well, I need to move around. And that's when I found Moore. What's his name?
Claude.
Claude. I found Claude Moore, and I think he had collapsed lung or something. He probably, I think he broke a couple of ribs, and he was just sitting on a rock. He looked like he was stable. He was sitting there like he didn't want to move at all. And then I just kept looking around. I looked around for stuff. Got my backpack, which was, still have it at home, the dented up old thing. And I never found my brother's sleeping bag. But I just kept wandering around looking at stuff. I saw a bunch of people with horses, a couple of horses, and had the fishermen had a couple of the horses had survived. I think 1 or 2 had died, but they were dealing with a guy that was with our party, a Jimmy Kawakami. I didn't know him. He was traveling from Oahu. He was friends, I think, of Claude Moore, and was just hiking with us and was in pretty bad shape. So he was on his back, just laying on the rocks, and the people with the horses didn't feel comfortable staying down there, but they couldn't take him with them. So they took off, and I'm kind of going, what about this guy? I don't know. I was like 12 years old. I don't know what I could do to help, but he looked cold. So I found this piece of scrap wood and built a little lean-to to get the wind off him. And then I just kind of hung out with him till it wasn't too long. It was probably 8. There was a plane that came by and circled around and around. Not too long after that, helicopters started coming in. And once I called the helicopter, I kind of just stood there and waved my hands and said where they came down to pick him up. As a result of that, Jimmy felt like I'd done a lot. I didn't feel like I did much of anything. But I got written up as being the hero of the month for Boys Life, the Boy Scout magazine. That was my 15 minutes of fame. I got it taken care of pretty young.
I remember thinking it was like being in a washing machine. Water was just everywhere. And like you said, there were bushes everywhere in the water. When at some point the roof was moving in, it bumped into a big rock. Mike Stearns was on the rock and he said, "Jump." I thought, that's a good idea. The water started to recede and I jumped off the roof, but I never made it. And I jumped off and I started to swim for it. But the water was receding so quickly I got sucked out, back to sea. The roof, I found it later that day, yeah, it was perfectly fine. After I got sucked under, after I jumped off the roof and dragged out to sea for a ways, I had that moment when you thought, well, this is it. This was an interesting life. Then the water quit moving, and I managed to get to the surface, and there was one of the Sierra Club women, Barbara Ackerman. She was about 20 feet away, repeating over and over again, thank you God for sparing me, thank you God. And I thought, yeah, thank you God or whoever. There was so much debris in the water you couldn't swim. And it was really dark, but you could tell where the land was as opposed to out in the ocean. And as I got back to land, the first person I ran into was Mike Stearns. And he'd lost his glasses so he couldn't see and he cracked his head open. Mike was older than us, and I said something like, what do you think we should do? And he said, high ground. And I'm like, yeah, that's a good idea. And he's like, but I can't see. So he grabbed on the back of my shorts, and off we went, kind of walking and sometimes walking on all fours, and we collected people as we went. We found Tim Twig Smith, who also lost his glasses. He also came along with us on our kind of hike out, away from the fault and away from the water. There was a lot of yelling. We're hearing people and thinking about how we're going to find them. And Mike and I were talking about that for a little bit, and he was like, we're going to get out of here. Because there were aftershocks going on. He's like, you gotta move. And so off we went moving, and we could hear it, and we were yelling for other people, but it was dark. And by the time we got done walking, it was daylight, and the sun was just coming up.
But I was down on the craft looking for a way to climb up. In fact, I don't think I was looking at the time. I just lay there, and I heard Mike's son Bobby, I think that was his name, saying, you know, here comes another one. I said, oh God, I'm not going to survive this one. The first one was bad enough, not another one. But that never got to the craft. You know, it might have been a third one possibly after that, but it kind of just petered out. Never got that far, eventually got out. We were sitting around huddling the rest of the really early morning, kind of back to back, keeping warm, because everybody was sleeping in their swimming trunks or shorts type of thing. I was kind of concerned that they might possibly run into a lava flow somewhere, because we had already had an earthquake and a tsunami. So I'm assuming that it was shaking bad enough that there must have been an eruption somewhere. But they decided, no, they were going to go walk out and attempt it anyway. Well, let's see, probably right around the second set of helicopters that came back, Park Ranger came in. So I let him know that the father and son were walking out on the Kalapata coastline. Later on, I heard that Dr. Mitchell, the surgeon in Hilo, he was with the Boy Scouts. He ended up in the craft. He got buried in the sill. A fisherman, from what I understand, got killed too. And I don't know if they ever found him. I think they figured he got washed out into the ocean. And if I can remember, the fishermen came by horseback. Some of the horses survived, and they found one swimming out in the ocean and one or two floating out there dead. And that's it, pretty much. I can't see anything you could have possibly do other than don't go there in the first place. Which, you know, is kind of like saying, don't cross the street because you might get run over with a car. Same, you know, it's the same situation. Take your chances.
I was bobbing up and down in the water, saying things I don't remember. So I was semi-unconscious. How I stayed afloat semi-unconscious, I don't know. Till this day, all I can explain to you, as far as what I know now, as far as knowing the Lord and about angels, it had to deal with something supernatural. I'm not going to say this or that. All I can say is that that is what happened to me. And the only way I can explain it is this. Because how can a semi-unconscious person stay afloat? You know, because I know swimming, you got a dog paddle at least to stay afloat. I literally was thinking, I want to die fast. I want to die fast. I want to die fast. Because I thought I was going to die. And all I didn't want to do was die a slow and painful death. You know. So that's what I'm going through. This 16-year-old teenager boy is saying to himself as he's going with all the debris. You can feel the debris. You can feel the water. And I'm going through the tumbling of the big wave heading inland. I didn't know I was heading inland until I'm thinking about all this. And then all of a sudden the water started to recede. And I felt it receding, and so I just grabbed. And I grabbed to anything. And when I grabbed onto land. I just popped myself up. It was like, boom, boom, I'm up. No wave. Me. No glasses. But anyway, I have no shoes. Because we never got our boots. We never got that far. I got on shorts. I got on a shirt. And now we're talking, I think it was about 4 in the morning. 4, is that when it happened? 5 in the morning. So, and then the sunrise was probably close to between 6:30 and 7 at that time. Because we're heading towards winter and we're 1 month before the shortest day. And then you've got that poly wind coming down, oh, and you're all wet. But yet I had to take off my shirt and put it on. I knew I had a big enough gash on my head. I need to get it on. I first hook up with Val Allen and Carl Moore, and I think I hook up with Timothy Twig Smith after that. It's just us 3. I just tell them, we got to get away from the water. Because what if something happens again? What if there's another earthquake? Another tsunami? I said, wait, come on, Mike, wait, Val. You know, because he could see, and I can't see. So we headed for the hills, but the hills were quite a distance away, where that hiking trail comes down, and where you see Halapē, and you make your way down the last descent into Halapē from way on. 8 miles up, as far as from there. And one guy, as far as I can remember, he had a busted up knee. You could see, like, the bone beneath that bone area and stuff like that. That's how bad he was. I had a bad head injury, and then my legs were all busted up from going with the water and the rocks and everything like that. So I was quite a mess. And Val Allen, he was fine. Timothy, he was fine as far as injuries, and so we walked together after we hooked up with 2 or 3 other fishermen and ate it. And all we could do was kind of determine how high we should be by the horizon. I believe it was Helena Pali. It was all foggy, and so the sun came up. And right after the sun came up, there was a plane that came overhead. And what I heard later on, it was this guy that went to go check out the eruption, because on that day, the same day, that earthquake created also an eruption. Started seeing some horses in the water, so Val, who wasn't injured and who had eyes and everything else, we opted and said, Val, you go down and tell the people we're here.
Deep breaths. There I was, originally from Houston at the age of 23, pursuing and finishing my college degree in biology at Hilo College. Moving to Hawaii was like a dream. I loved the Hilo lifestyle, the people, the culture, the food, and exploring this unique, beautiful island and making friends from so many different places. I was also fascinated by Volcano National Park. I lived in Hilo, Kīlauea, across from the ocean near Richardson Beach. It was eerie driving home to see the tide so low along the coastline and the fish ponds' water levels so low. For some time after the tsunami, it was unsettling at night to hear the waves breaking. Needless to say, I stayed away from swimming and being near the waves for quite some time.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, maybe I'm just... It's funny, because all my life I have water dreams.
Like dreams of really big surf or floating down a river? Just huge water and not terrified?
You're intrigued by it. It's like exciting.
It's something happening, and you don't know what it was.
Maybe if you're younger than a certain age, it doesn't go into trauma. It goes into something else.
But it's, for me, it's like people have flying dreams. That's the big thing.
And
for me, it's like the water dreams now.
So those are the actual words of the survivors. I would like to have Beverly and Fel please come up if they are able to. And we open this up to any questions or comments that you might have. Thoughts? Yeah, it's not working anymore.
Oh, best shot.
They honored us at the Tsunami Museum by being there on the commemoration, and it just so happened that there were 2 other people there that were with the fishermen who had never shared their stories before, and they appeared that day. And it was a pretty powerful thing. We've had contact with them since, and they're eventually going to spend some time with us so we can capture their stories. They say it's very hard to go back, and only once one of them has gone back, but the other wouldn't anymore. Yeah. He was one of my great students at UH Hilo. Oh, this will work? Almost. So let's find out. Questions or comments? It's a lot to take in.
Yeah.
And it was a kind of a Rashomon way of dealing with this script, yeah? Each person had a perspective that was slightly different or colored differently from wherever they were in Halapē at the time. Yes?
Yeah, I know the helicopter came, got most of the people, but then I heard stories of some of the boys actually ran all the way out to the little petroglyph fields or something. Was that one of the true numbers?
Stories. Oh, wait a minute. No, yes?
Now.
Hello? Hello?
She comes, she goes.
Sorry. So you believe some of the boys ran out toward the petroglyph
Yeah,
fields?
that's when I heard that story. not everybody got picked up by the helicopter. Some you guys ran out.
Is it working?
Yes.
To my knowledge, all the Boy Scouts, everybody except for two of the fishermen, went out by helicopter. There are these two fishermen. I think Mike described the guy whose knee was bust open. He hiked all the way out. He and another guy, and apparently when they got to the top, they realized they didn't have their car keys, so they had to keep hiking on the road. And with these kneecaps sticking.
And I'd like to ask Beverly to say which group she was with, please.
Oh, so I was with three other friends that you heard, Barbara Ackerman, Keith and Brad, and so we were kind of independent. We hiked down, saw the coconut tree grove, filled up with Boy Scouts, and then kept walking. Oh, those are all the fishermen. We'll keep walking. Let's go down closer to the shoreline near the bay. So we were kind of independent. Okay, it's working.
I just wanted to mention that I heard, and this is all hearsay, that Dr. Irwin walked out with his son Robbie. I think he was with Sierra Club. He was a psychologist maybe in Hilo, and had a son Robbie Irwin, and so they might have done that instead of getting picked up.
Did everyone hear that? And we're not sure about that. You know, one of the things that this underscores is that there's much that should be captured after these kinds of events, and they have been so kind to share their stories with us. But it's also not easy to revisit it for them, so it's extraordinary. But we sure learn, don't we?
Yes.
Yeah. And we hope to gather more. The fact that my dear friend Lisby knew Beverly and knew Barbara and added to the story, because we had one quaint little compact sheet, and then when we found out that there was a connection with Beverly right now, we were able to get more from her. It was wonderful, and we appreciated that as it expanded everything we knew. And you know, he was a little kiddo. So the fact that they allowed their stories to be captured is unbelievable.
It is.
More?
Also, you know, a lot of the people lost their shoes, so I don't think a whole lot of people opted for the walk out. I was barefoot and I wasn't walking.
What I heard about Dr. Irwin was his feet were completely bloody after that hike. He did it anyway because he had a child. Didn't want to stay there anymore, you know, but his feet were completely cold.
Thank you for mentioning, because we'll follow up on that. We'll try to find out. Yeah, yeah. Ikahimoni now. More questions? Yes.
Not a question, just a comment. Thank you for putting this together and bringing it to life for us.
Haley's from the Kernan family in Hilo and had been to Halapē before and after this. And as part of her father was a great naturalist. He's about walking everywhere, living the outdoor life. So I always took his family. So that helped us understand. I'm from Hilo, but I've never been to Halapē. And there are other people here, you'll see the program. Colorado, Palau, originally Pennsylvania, but through San Diego, Hilo. So some of us, even the Hilo people, it's not something that we ordinarily do. You have to be an adventurer.
I'm interested to find out what happened after that life-changing event with your lights. Like, what do you do now? And
you go first.
Is it on?
Yeah, it's on.
Yes. I was just thinking back to John's slideshow where he talked about PTSD and kind of how you guys ended as well. And so after, you know, the whole event completed and it was in the newspapers and it kind of passed, I didn't really talk about it. And then I finished up Hilo College, 78. I went over to UH Manoa and got a master's degree. And then I didn't talk about it there either. Then I moved back to the mainland in 81, and I really didn't even talk about it then. So it was really when I moved back to Hawaii in 92, I decided, I think I'm going to take swimming lessons. Like staying away from waters and all that type of things. For the most part, except that my friend Barbara, she's going, Bev, let's go whitewater rafting in Oregon. Okay, Barbara, I'll go. So I'm flying from the mainland, I'm here in Oregon, did one 3-day trip. That was pretty good. You know, the rapids weren't too bad in the Rogue River. And then there was another time she said, well, let's go in the Snake River now. So that one was stepping up a little bit. And there was one incident where, I'm kind of digressing from your question, but one incident where we got to a little place, and up ahead was these little bitty rapids going on. And so the guide said, okay, this is where we can get out and ride the rapids. And I'm like, no way. And he's like, no, Cassie, you don't understand. Let me tell you. And I said, okay, well, it's going to be easy. We just, I'll hold on to you. You hold on to me by arms. And then, as it dips, you exhale. And then, when you come up, you inhale. I think that was it. Well, I got out of rhythm pretty shortly after we decided to do that. Managed to make it through it. I was a lot stressed out. And the guy said, you nearly pulled my arm. So, but anyway, I did come back and I took swimming lessons and I went, I could swim. Okay, that's good. So that was another milestone that made it. And then little by little, my friends that knew I'd been down there, Lisby, etc., talking about it. And then Walter Dudley, through Jenny Johnson with Civil Defense, got in contact with me and said we want to do an interview. And so they came over and that helped me kind of open up more. And then little by little, this has been really remarkable. I mean, I was even tearing up when you're first starting. So it's a continuing release that I didn't realize is still buried. But thank you for allowing me to express myself. And what am I doing now? I just retired a year and a half ago. I have been in pharmaceutical sales for 10 years on the mainland. I came back to Hawaii, decided I got my real estate license, did that for 27 years, and so here I am. Good job.
I learned a lot about myself that day, but a lot of the things I learned didn't really, come forward until years and years later, and I realized that there were some defining moments there. The event I learned a lot about myself. I became more confident after that, having survived something like that. You know where your limits are, where your lines are. I can do that. I survived a tsunami. So, in some ways, it was helpful. And a lot of the folks were more affected by it and didn't talk about it for years and still don't. I spent a lot of time in the water as a child and a teenager and an adult. And so I was never afraid of the water after that as much. So I went on to do things that I think, came out of that. I was telling Jackie earlier that in her class, I learned a lot of confidence that helped me move forward. And so I think it affected me in smaller ways that came to fruition later in life. I became a firefighter. And I think, those kinds of situations where you're put into stress, you just learn a lot about yourself.
Yes, have either of you been back, or do you care to go back, even if it's by boat, if you want to hike down?
I would love to find a way to go back without hiking in. And I never hiked out, so, that's another chore.
My mother owned a hiking company on the Big Island, and she convinced me about a year later that I should go with her down to Halapē. And I had reservations, of course. And we got down there and set up camp, and I actually found some of my, my things in the sand, and my knife and the other people's stuff. They were kind of. Wow. And no, I did not find a camera. I lived in Kilauea as a kid. I grew up in Kilauea, right across from Richardson's, and my sister and I's favorite game was to go down to the beach and find all the stuff that had washed out from the hospital from the 46 earthquake and kind of made its way back into the bay there. So finding stuff like, in Halape was kind of, reliving that. And everything seemed hunky-dory. We went to bed, and about 10 at night there was an earthquake. Oh. I was like, that's it, I'm out. So I packed up, I said to my mom, I'm going. So I packed up hike about 2 miles out and set up camp there. I haven't been back since, but I would love to go. If I could do it without hiking, that'd be great. You ever got a helicopter?
All right, so that's our recording of that dramatic reading.
Pretty cool, yeah.
So pretty quick here, Dan. Let's wrap it up. What do you think?
Yeah, got me thinking about some ideas. We'll talk about some more later, but yeah, really interesting to see all those stories woven together.
Hear firsthand what it was like, and what you might anticipate and be prepared for. The next time that would happen for an island.
Yep. All right. Well, I think that's it. Be back next week, 5 p.m. Hawaii Standard Time, our normal schedule. But Phil, it'll be me and Lou mainly, and we'll make it work. Yeah.
Yeah, we'll see. I'll probably be here in some capacity. We'll see how much I can be involved. Yeah.
Yeah. All right. Sounds good.
All right. Thank you, guys. And thanks to Lou on the back end.
And Carrie and Dano.
Carrie and Dano on ASL. Yeah. And for this presentation to all the readers, National Park hosted it. USGS HVO put it on. So yeah. Mahalo, everyone. Until next week, from our nonprofit HVERI. For Lou Atori, Dano and Carrie, Dane DuPont, I'm Philip Ong. Aloha, everyone.